So hello and welcome. So in this lab, we are going to talk about the multi-cloud scenario where we are having the Azure as well as AWS cloud. So what is the main purpose of this lab? So the main purpose of this lab is that we need to be able to ping an RDP from Azure virtual machine having a private IP address to an EC2 instance having a private IP address. So how are we going to achieve this? So for this, we need to build a site-to-site VPN tunnel between Azure and AWS. So to achieve this, we need to use multiple network components in Azure as well as AWS. So let's talk about the Azure network components. So the first component that we will be using in Azure is the VNet. So here I am going to use the VNet with the address space of 172.16.0.0/16. Once I create the VNet within that address space, I will be dividing that VNet into multiple subnets. So if you look at the diagram, I have divided this VNet into multiple subnet in subnet 01 and gateway subnet. Okay, and the network I have selected for subnet 1 is 172.16.1.0/24, and for the gateway subnet it's 2.0/24. Since this is a lab environment, I am selecting /24. But if it is a production environment, don't go for /24, use /27, because that will save a lot of IP addresses if we are using /27 subnet. The name that we have given is gateway subnet. So we have to give this name as it is. Okay, we cannot give any custom name for this subnet. Why? Because the network components, user network components that we are going to use, that has to be there in this dedicated subnet only. We cannot give our custom name. It is how the Azure has designed the naming convention for the gateway subnet. So the other component that we are going to talk about is virtual network gateway. So what is a virtual network gateway? So virtual network gateway we are using for connecting to the remote site. So there are two types of virtual network gateways. One is the VPN, that is what we are going to set up in this lab, and other is the express route. Okay, so if you want to connect a remote site to the Azure data center using the express route, you have to involve your internet service provider for connecting the remote site to the Azure data center. Okay, since we are not going to have the lab on express route, we are just going to have the lab in VPN. Okay, we are going to build the IPsec tunnel between Azure and AWS. Okay, so VPN and express routes are the types of virtual network gateway. Okay, so while creating the virtual network gateway, we would need approximately 20 to 25 minutes for the virtual network gateway to get created. So once the virtual network gateway has been created, we'll be getting the public IP address. Okay, we'll be getting the public IP address. Also, what exactly happens in Azure data center while we are creating the virtual network gateway? So there are two virtual machines that are created in Azure data center once we create the virtual network gateway. So these two VMs are for the functioning of the virtual network gateway. We cannot take the control of these two VMs that are getting created in Azure data center. Okay, we cannot even see it, or we cannot take a RDP of this machine. Okay, so once we delete the virtual network gateway, these two virtual machines will get deleted in background. Other component is the local network gateway. Local network gateway is used to represent the customer side of the network. So what is the other side in our lab? The other side in our lab is AWS. Okay, so inside the local network gateway, I'm going to put the public IP address of the AWS side network component. Okay, and there is a pre-shared key. I will be putting inside the local network gateway so that we will be able to establish the connection between Azure and AWS once the configuration at the AWS side is completed. Okay, so that was all about the Azure network components. So now let's move on to AWS side network components. So if we look at AWS side, I have created a VPC of CIDR 192.168.0.0/16, and once the VPC has been created, we'll be dividing that VPC in subnet 192.168.1.0/24. Here we are going to have only one subnet. Okay, once the subnet has been created, then I will be creating the components like virtual private gateway, customer gateway, and the VPN connection. So what is a virtual private gateway? So the virtual private gateway is a VPN connector on the AWS side of the site-to-site VPN. So what we are going to do, we are going to build a VPN between these two clouds, Azure and AWS, and all of the traffic that is going to go through the tunnel of this VPN is going to be encrypted. Okay, from AWS to Azure and Azure to AWS. So the other component is the customer gateway. The customer gateway is going to represent the Azure side. Okay, so what is the network component in Azure that will be having the public IP address? Okay, virtual network gateway is going to have the public IP address once it is created. So what are we going to do? We are going to put the public IP address of virtual network gateway of Azure inside the customer gateway of AWS. And once the virtual private gateway in AWS is completed, we will be getting a public IP address for virtual private gateway. So this IP address we need to put inside the local network gateway of Azure. So this local network gateway and customer gateway are just for the representation of the remote site. So once the virtual private gateway and customer gateway are created, we will be attaching them to the VPC. Once the attachment of these two network components are completed, we will be moving on to creation of the VPN connection. So once the VPN connection has been created, we will be getting two tunnels. Okay, we will be getting two tunnels. Okay, and with the help of the tunnel, we will be communicating with Azure. So once all of these network components have been created, what is the main purpose of this lab? We need to be able to ping or RTP from Azure virtual machine, which is there in 172 subnet, and we should be able to reach to 192 subnet that is there in AWS. So with the help of these components, what we have created, we still won't be able to reach the AWS or Azure from AWS. Why? Because there is one important entry that we have not talked about, is the route table. Because how will the Azure understand where I need to send the traffic? We have not told the Azure in order to reach AWS 192 subnet, how should we route the traffic? So to tell Azure how to route the traffic, we need to create a route table inside Azure as well as AWS. Okay, similar route table will be there for the AWS. So what I'm going to write inside that route table, I'm going to write, if you want to reach 192 subnet, okay, if you want to reach 192 subnet from Azure, which is the Azure component I need to send the traffic to. So I need to send the traffic to virtual network gateway. Okay, so see, this kind of entry I'm going to make in Azure route table. So similar entry we are going to create for the AWS as well. Okay, so if you want to reach 172 subnet from 192 subnet, which is the AWS component I should send the traffic to? I should send the traffic to virtual private gateway inside the AWS. So this entry will come inside the route table of AWS. So that's all about the network diagram and the network component for Azure and AWS we will be creating in the lab. So now let's proceed on to the detailed steps that we'll be performing during the lab. So in step number 1, we are going to create the resource group. Once we create the resource group, we are going to create the virtual network. Okay, with this CIDR 172.16.0.0/16. Once we create the virtual network, we are going to divide this virtual network in two subnets. Okay, 1.0 and 2.0/24. In step number 4, we are going to create the virtual network gateway that will be having the public IP address. Once we create the virtual network gateway, we will be switching onto the AWS site configuration, because to move on to step number 5, we would need the network configuration for the AWS side. So we will be jumping to the AWS side after step number 4. Once we do the configuration on the AWS side, we'll be coming back to the local network gateway, step number 5, and we are going to tell what is the public IP address for the AWS side. We are going to represent the AWS side network. So what we are going to do, we are going to tell what is the public IP address for the other side of the VPN device, that is the AWS. And what is the AWS key? There is a key that we will be getting. We have to put that key into the local network gateway for the Azure side. Then at step number 6, we are going to create a route table, and we are going to tell if you want to send the traffic to 192 subnet, where you need to send the traffic. And after that, we will be creating a Windows virtual machine that will be having the public IP address as well as the private IP address. Public IP address, why we are having the public IP address? We are going to have the public IP so that I can RDP to that virtual machine. Okay, that public IP address we are not going to ping or do anything. It is just for the RDP purpose. So now let's move on to create the resource group. So the step number 1, we are going to create the resource group. So let me click on create subscription. I will be selecting as this one. Resource group name I will be keeping Azure_RG, and the location I will be selecting as East US region. Click on create. Okay, the resource group has been created. So step number 1 has been done. Now we will be doing step number 2, 3, and 4 in one shot. While we are creating the virtual network gateway, we will be creating the virtual network as well as the subnet. So now let's create the virtual network gateway. Click on create virtual network gateway. Subscription I will be selecting as this one, Visual Studio Enterprise. The name of the virtual network gateway I will be selecting as VNG Azure, and the region is East US. So there are two types of virtual network gateway. One is the VPN and express route. So in this lab, we are going to concentrate only on the VPN. Express route, you have to involve your ISP for building the connectivity to the Azure for the remote site. The VPN type that we are going to have is the route based and policy based. So what is the difference between the route based and the policy based? So route based, we can have multiple VPN connections, and for the policy based, we can only have the one VPN connection. The SKU I'm selecting as default, and the virtual network I'll be creating while we are creating the virtual network gateway. So the virtual network name I will be giving as VNet-Azure, The resource group I will be using Azure _ RG, and the network CIDR I will be using 172.16 0.0/16, and subnets I will be creating as address range of 172.16.1.0/24, and the subnet name I will be giving as Azure subnet 01. So now there is one shortcut. Just click on OK and we'll be coming back onto the screen. After we come back, the gateway subnet will be automatically created. Click on OK. Again, we'll be going onto that screen. Click on create virtual network. We'll be getting the gateway subnet that will be there inside the 172.0.0/24. Okay, so I will be changing that to 2. Just click on OK, and the public IP address name I can give as Azure PIP 18.10.19. Let's see we are having this or not. Yes, we are having. AZ I will be keeping as 1, and I will be selecting as the default option. Okay, disabled. And for the enable activity I will be keeping as disabled, and for the configuration of the BGP we are not having the BGP configuration, so I will be selecting as disabled. Just click on review and create. So once we click on create, virtual network gateway takes approximately 15 to 25 minutes for the creation. So once the virtual network gateway has been created, we'll be moving on to the next steps. So I'll be pausing this video unless and until the virtual network gateway has been created. Okay, now the virtual network gateway has been created and it took approximately 21 minutes. So now step number 2nd, 3rd and 4th one is done. Now we'll be jumping onto the AWS site configuration, because for step number 5, that is creation of the local network gateway, we need to add some of the details from the AWS side. So that's why we cannot continue at step number 5 as of now. So let's jump onto the AWS site configuration. So for the AWS side, first step we'll be creating the VPC, then we'll be creating the subnet, and we'll be creating the customer gateway and so on. So now let's move on to the AWS side, and the region I will be selecting for the AWS side is the North Virginia region. Let's create the VPC. Click on create VPC, and I will be giving the name as AWS VPC 01. CIDR I will be keeping as 192.0.0/16, and just click on create, and after that we'll be creating the subnets inside this VPC. So now this is done, and we'll be creating the subnet, that is step number 2. So click on create subnet, select the VPC. What is our VPC name? AWS-VPC 01. What is the subnet name I should give? AWS-subnet 01. AWS-subnet 01, and the CIDR is 192.168.1.0/24. Okay, then click on create subnet. Alright, the subnet has been created, so our step number 2 has been completed. Now we'll be creating the customer gateway. Remember, the customer gateway, we are going to represent the Azure side of the network. Okay, for representing the Azure side, we need the public IP address. And what is the public IP address for the virtual network gateway that has been created? Let's see the public IP address. Where is our virtual network gateway? So this is my public IP address. Let's copy the public IP address. So now let's create the customer gateway. Click on create customer gateway. Okay, BGP I'm not using. VHG public IP address I'm putting as this one. Certificate ARN I'm not selecting, and just click on create customer gateway. So the customer gateway has been created. So step number 3 is also completed. Now we'll be creating the virtual private gateway and attaching it to the VPC. So now let's create the virtual private gateway. Click on create virtual private gateway and the name will be giving as virtual private gateway 01, and I will be selecting as the Amazon default ASN. ASN will be not talking about the ASN because that will be a different topic itself. Just click on create virtual network gateway, and once this is created, we'll be attaching it to the VPC. Click on attach to VPC and select the VPC name AWS-VPC01. Attach. It's attaching. So step number 4 is also done. So we'll be moving on step number 5, that is create site-to-site VPN connection. Okay, this is attached. Let's move on to VPN. Click on site-to-site VPN connection. Click on create VPN connection. AWS VPN 01. Click on virtual private gateway. Virtual private gateway, select on the virtual private gateway that we have created, AWS_VPG-01. Customer gateway, select the customer gateway, and I'll be selecting as the static routing, and inside this I'll be putting the static IP address of 172.168.0.0/16, and I will be selecting as 0.0.0.0/0, and just click on create VPN connection. Okay, so this step is also done. Now let's refresh this. So if you see the tunnel is down as of now. So what we are going to do, we are going to download the configuration file. So before that, step number 6 is create the VPN connection and link the virtual private gateway and customer. This is already done. This is done. Then as step number 7, it is telling that we need to download the configuration file and copy the pre-shared key at the Azure local network gateway. So let's download the configuration file. The options I'm selecting as generic, platform as generic, and software vendor agnostic, and just click on download. Okay, so once the file has been downloaded, we'll be having a key over here. Where is that key? So this is the pre-shared key. We need to copy, go on to the Azure side. Okay, so let's go on to the Azure side. Click on virtual network gateway, connections, add. Connection underscore Azure or AWS. connection type as site to site, local network gateway. Let's create a local network gateway G-01, and the IP address I need to put is the public IP address for the AWS side. So what is the public IP address? So this is the public IP address. This IP will be there in our file also over here. So this IP address we need to put inside the local network gateway, and the address space I need to put as 192, 192.168.1.0.1./24. Just click on OK and click on, and the key I need to put the key. Where is our key? Appreciate key. Just copy and paste over here. And I am not going to select as enable BGP or use Azure private IP address. Just click on OK. Okay, after you have done this configuration, it takes some time for this tunnel to come up. So let's wait. So if you look at this one, so this step is also done. And if you look at the Azure side, we have just created the local network gateway as well. So this step is also done. Now let's move on to AWS step number 8. We are going to add the routes in the route table. So let's go on to the AWS side, click on the route tables. What is our route table? Okay, this is the route table that got created. Routes, click on edit route. So now I need to add the route. So what route I need to add? If you need to go to 172.16.1.0/24, which is the component in AWS you need to send the traffic to. I need to send the traffic to virtual private gateway. So that is the entry that we are going to create. And this virtual private gateway will be responsible for taking the connectivity from AWS to Azure. Okay, that entry we are going to create now. What is the network dot 16.0.0/16, and you need to send the traffic to virtual private gateway that we have created. Just click on save changes. So route table is also done. Let's check on the Azure side what is pending. At Azure side we need to create a route table. Okay, just type over here route tables, click on create route table, resource group Azure_RG and the East US region. Then route table 01, click on review and create. Just click on create. Okay, the route table has been created. So we'll be associating the subnet. So what is the subnet that we are going to associate is select our virtual network VNet-Azure, I guess. This is the name that we had given. Let me check. Yeah, VNet-Azure. Then we are going to select the subnet. Okay, this is the subnet we are going to associate. and the routes that we are going to add is to AWS. Let's give the name, prefix as IP address. If I need to send the traffic to AWS side, what is the CIDR of the AWS side? This one, 192.168.0.0/16. So that range I need to provide over here. What is the next hop? We need to send the traffic to the virtual network gateway. So now we need to reach from 172 subnet to 192 subnet. We cannot jump from here to here directly. Okay, there is a tunnel in between which we have built. Okay, so if you want to go through that tunnel, which is the component in Azure I should send the traffic to? I should send the traffic to the virtual network gateway. So that is what the entry I am making. Okay, if you want to send the traffic to 192 subnet, if you want to send the traffic to 192 subnet, I should send the traffic to the virtual network gateway. I should send the traffic to virtual network gateway. Click on add. Okay, so this is built. Let's check our tunnel. Site-to-site VPN connection. Okay, our tunnel is also up. Now, step number 6 is done for the Azure, and step number 9 is pending for the AWS side, and step number 7 is pending. So we need to create the virtual machine in AWS as well as virtual machine in Azure. So now let's create the virtual machine. Click on virtual machine, click on create. Resource group I will be selecting as Azure RGVM01, Azure East US region, and name I will be giving as and password. Click on review and create. Okay, what is missing? Okay, underscore we cannot give a hyphen Azure. Click on review and create. Click on create. Now, while the virtual machine in the Azure is getting created, we'll be creating the EC2 instance in AWS. Let's go into AWS and create a EC2 instance. So now let's create the EC2 instance. Click on launch instance. The name I will be giving as AWS_01 EC2. Click on Windows. Then key pair I will be using as test key, and the network I will be selecting as AWS-VPC01. Auto assign, we don't require the public IP address. Then just click on launch instance. Let's see. Okay, so now EC2 instance creation is in pending state. So I'll pause this video and I will be back once the EC2 instance is created and the virtual machine is created in Azure. So now the virtual machine has been created in Azure, and we have created one EC2 instance in AWS. So now let's log in inside this virtual machine. Okay, this virtual machine is having the public IP address. Public IP address we are going to use only for the RDP. It has nothing to do with the tunneling. Let me turn off the firewall. So let me check the IP address. We'll be checking the private IP address. We opening the PowerShell, increasing the font, skip it to 18. IP config. What is the private IP address? 172.16.1.4. Okay, so let's jump on to EC2 instance. Just click on connect, RDP, download RDP file. Let's try to get the password. This is my key, decrypt password. This is my password for the EC2 instance, and this is my IP address. So let's try to check whether we are able to RDP. I am inside the Azure virtual machine. Okay, that is having the IP address of 172.16.1.4. Now let's check whether we are able to do the RDP to AWS side. Okay, RDP is working. That means our tunnel is working. Now let me give the credential. So from inside of the Azure virtual machine, I am able to take the RDP of the AWS virtual machine using the private IP address. Now let me turn off the firewall for the EC2 instance. Yeah, I am inside the EC2 instance. Let me open the PowerShell. Let me increase the font. I'll just keep it as 18. Click config. What is the private IP address? 192.168.1. Okay, let me turn off the firewall. And let me go to the Azure virtual machine. Now I am inside the Azure virtual machine. Let's check whether we are able to ping the AWS virtual machine. I guess that should not work because we need to open few of the ports onto the security group. Let's check. Okay, this is not working because we need to open some of the ports onto the security group that we have in AWS. Let's go over there. See to click on this security group, inbound rule, add rule. As of now, I'll be giving as ICMP all, and I'll be selecting as allow for all. Click on save. Let's check. Yes, we are able to ping the private IP address of AWS virtual machine using the private IP address of Azure. Okay, what is the IP address of Azure VM? We are inside the 172 subnet, but we are able to ping an RDP to the AWS private IP address. That means the site-to-site VPN tunnel that we have built, that is working. Okay, so that's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching.